staying for the documentary. Thank you everybody that took part in that documentary. That was fantastic. That was I really enjoyed that. So today we're going to start the panel discussion. We have Brittany Brahout. Brao.
I'll answer to anything.
She's a licensed professional counselor for the state of South Carolina. She's trained in marriage, couples, family therapy, and primarily practices cognitive behavioral therapy. Brittany has a history of working in schools, in home, community settings, different agencies, and currently is in private practice. She's providing both in-person and virtual therapy, and that was one of the conversations we have already had. Brittany is trained with the DSM-5 and can diagnose and treat a multitude of different mental health disorders. We have Dr. Shanna Williams with us. She's a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner. She's completed a Master of Science in Nursing for PMHNP at the Medical University of South Carolina in 2007, and her Doctorate of Nursing Practice in August of 2020. She gained her mental health experience in inpatient, outpatient, emergency, crisis, substance detox, and private practice. That's a lot. Shanna has worked with patients ages 11 up, and the most common diagnoses she works with in the outpatient settings are anxiety disorders, depression, bipolar, ADHD, PTSD, and OCD. She also has worked with substance dependence populations as well as inpatient and crisis psychiatric facilities. And I'm actually going to post Shanna's biography online because it's actually a really fantastic bio. So we're going to come back to you on that. Rachel Nash is a board certified patient advocate and a rehabilitation counselor. Rachel has chosen to focus her patient advocacy practice to both mental health and physical health because she considers both medical management. Rachel's passion is driven by her personal experience navigating life in recovery from mental illness. Rachel strongly believes patient advocacy is a way to assist others to navigate complicated healthcare systems and reach optimal wellness. As well as being experienced in patient advocacy, Rachel has been employed in vocational rehab at both federal and state levels, as well as waiver case management. So we have a patient advocate, a therapist, and a nurse practitioner. So if anybody has any questions, we'll open the floor up right now. Yes, sir.
You know, as a patient advocate, how does a patient get a patient advocate? I'm just curious. If somebody needs some help, how would they know to contact you or such?
Well, there's several ways. Hospitals have patient advocates. Facilities have patient advocates. I'm an independent private patient advocate. So someone could contact me that way.
Okay. If somebody was in the hospital, so if a patient came into the hospital, could they request a patient advocate who was in that hospital if they had a mental health issue? I mean, if they were in for a mental health issue.
Hospitals, facilities have patient advocates,
Okay.
and absolutely they could request one.
Okay.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to know who the patient advocate is right from the get-go when you get into the hospital, because they'll help you navigate all the different insurance requirements and all the different things that you might need. And they advocate for your care, right? So Rachel's going to make sure that you have autonomy and you're the person that's advocating for yourself, but she's going to help you bring up the rear. Yes.
And at any time during the hospitalization, you can actually ask for a patient advocate.
Okay.
It seems like that's a sort of a well-kept secret, the
It
whole
is.
patient advocate idea. I mean, you hear about case managers, but you don't hear too much about patient advocacy.
One of the reasons why patient advocacy is so important is it's the systems that we're dealing with. You may have a wonderful relationship with your doctor and your nurse practitioner, but you have the players, and I call the players the corporation that's running everything. You have the pharmaceuticals, and you have insurance companies. So you have players that you're not really seeing inside that room when you are talking to your doctor or your nurse practitioner. They are also controlling it. So an advocate will recognize that and understand what needs to be done to break down those barriers. It's not easy for a patient who's not feeling well to have to break down those barriers, but a patient advocate will sit on hold for hours and hours on end to get transferred around, and that's what happens. It's, you're dealing with the process to ensure that your patient is on the way to wellness.
And then oftentimes in inpatient facilities, they have a certain amount of time based on that systematic thing that Rachel talked about. And they have to go, hey, you're better, you're good, can you be functional?
Yeah.
Goodbye. So patient advocate coming into that system is like, wait up, we have to move slower? Or we gotta call the insurance company back for that?
So as a family member,
Mm-hmm.
and this happens a lot where you hear as a family member, you know, perhaps my child, my spouse isn't really ready to, I don't feel, based on what I know, they're ready to be discharged. Is that when we say, as a family member, because like you were pointing out, a lot of people that are in crisis are not thinking about those kinds of things. We would contact and ask for a
Right.
patient advocate.
And what is happening in that facility? That is very important too. Because if somebody's they're having a heart attack and they're being treated, or somebody's in a mental health facility and they're being treated, chances are they're being, where the person had the heart attack, they're getting a kinder service.
So how do you determine, as a mental health professional, when somebody comes in with a serious mental illness, what the goal is going to be, and for the treating professional, and are you limited by insurance or what, or you know, the powers that be on how far you can take somebody in their treatment?
It is limited by the system and how much that insurance is going to cover and actually pay. And I drastically hate to say that, but that's the way that the system is set up, because they will say, and I've even had to advocate for patients as a practitioner, but hey guys, we're sitting in treatment team, we're having this discussion, I'm seeing this person is not functional, they're not ready to go, and they're looking at me going, insurance is gonna pay for 3 days.
Yeah.
What else would you like for us to do?
So it's like, we need to get somebody stable, but what is stable? How does that
Exactly.
lead to a productive life?
Exactly, and then even when they're ready to be stable, it is, you know, what's next? What's supposed to happen next? We're going to discharge this person, where are they going next? And sometimes for them, all we have to do is discharge them to a safe disposition or a safe place. Okay, so where's that safe place? Well, that's the homeless shelter. Okay, well, this person is psychotic.
Yeah.
Is that really safe? And so it's been for me as a medical professional, it's a little bit different. I think differently. I've been the unpopular, opinionated person in the room that is slowing down that process. And oftentimes we don't have that from a lot of medical professionals such as myself. I've had to argue with medical professionals to be like, if this was your family member, are you really okay with this person discharging?
So I have a question on that.
Yes.
So when they come straight from an inpatient facility, and we know that they really should be going to step down, but instead you send them straight to Brittany, and so that's their counselor. Are you gonna see them 5 days a week? That's not possible, right? So what do you do with somebody who Dr. Shannon says, okay, we're discharging this person, and your team does the discharge plan, and I don't think you would. But, you know,
Hey, I'm
that's
a
how it
professional.
happens.
That's how it happens.
Yeah, sometimes that's how it happens. I mean, they discharge to Pathways Community Center close to us, which is a homeless shelter. So they do discharge to the homeless shelter. So, but they discharge to somebody has a therapist, they discharge back to the therapist. What are the gaps that we're gonna see missed between where you see the person and you get the person?
When somebody comes to me when they leave an inpatient facility, often the inpatient facility will call the office and get them put on my schedule next available. Typically, they try to get them in as soon as possible, so within 2 weeks. But there have been people who have waited a good minute to get on my calendar. When they do finally get to me though, you know, in the assessment process that I do, we kind of determine, okay, first, insurance is gonna cover so-and-so sessions a week, a month, so. I typically start out, you know, weekly sessions, we move to bi-weekly, depends on the progress and, you know, what the needs are in therapy, but the gaps can be problematic at times. I do know, I hear stories of people being, you know, referred out and given 3 referral sources, hey, call these numbers. Okay, well, if you can't get in touch can't get anyone on the phone, you know, with those 3 numbers, what do you do? So that's another thing that I think patient advocacy ties into as well, which I think is really great. I've gotten a lot of calls from patient advocates like, hey, we need to get somebody set up for therapy. So I think working together like that kind of bridges those gaps.
So proactive. the therapists have to be proactive, the nurse practitioners have to be proactive, the doctors, the teams have to be proactive in making sure that those people come out with a solid plan and not with a plan. But the realities of that is,
It can be really
Yeah,
open-ended.
right.
yeah, it's really
Mhm.
open-ended, right, so.
And that person may fall through the cracks if they miss that set appointment, that they may not have known that may have been set up for them for medications, for therapy. Because if they miss Brittany's appointment, the next thing they know, they have to get back into the rotation, and they have gone now, 4 to 6 weeks from their hospitalization, and she's trying to get them back in. They're not able to get back in, their schedules don't mesh, and then we have Rachel as a patient advocate going, hey, they gotta get back on your schedule. And she's like, I'm trying to find a space, and
But if they have all these things in place, right, if they have a Dr. Shanna, if they have a Brittany, if they have a Rachel, then it's more likely going to happen for them. Or, but if they don't have a team of people who are watching out for them, or a family member or friend who's watching out for them, then we know the outcomes are completely different, right?
absolutely,
Varies by the
very
individual.
different.
We need the community. We need the community. We need kindness. We need understanding. And that is the piece. If we can get that piece, because it's not just medication. That's one piece. And I talk about it as a cake. It's a recipe. We can't just say therapy. That's not enough. It has to be people caring. And that human connection, and that is missing. So that is the piece. But the greatest thing is when we come together, that's how we can break that barrier.
So I guess, sorry, I'll get you, Jennifer, right next as soon as I've got one, sorry.
I'm glad you said that, ma'am, because for years we've been doing the same thing, expecting different results. We've been prescribing pills, and if they don't work in 5 to 6 weeks or so, then the number one reason people stop taking medication is the side effects, or it takes too long for it to kick in.
Yep.
There's a lot of information out there, a plethora of information. You had one peer specialist out there. A peer specialist is a person who has had that walk. A peer specialist is defined as a person with that lived experience. The therapeutic value of one person who has a diagnosis helping someone else with a diagnosis is unparalleled. You know, and it can reduce the number of hospital visits to emergency rooms. It can reduce the number of pills you take. I have 2 diagnoses, and not only am I a peer specialist, but I'm a peer facilitator. I teach it in the state of North Carolina. But my point is, there's a lot of things. Mental health first aid. You know, like CPR is the physical first aid. There's a class called mental health first aid. Wellness recovery action plan. Are we familiar with these things?
Yes.
Well,
I think this room is familiar with these
these
things.
Yeah.
We want
things
the
will
communities
help us
to be familiar
not
with these
need
things.
medication.
Yeah,
It will cut down on the therapy visits,
for sure.
the hospital stays.
Well, I think part of what you're saying is NAMI is filling a lot of the gaps, thankfully. I mean, thank goodness for the NAMI volunteers and for the NAMI organizations, and because NAMI really does, and I know you're with NAMI Charlotte, and so I know that you're filling a lot of the gaps. You're
Yes.
filling a lot of the gaps for your community. You are a community activist, you are a community member, and you're filling a lot of the gaps that can help the licensed professionals come together with all of us to make sure that not only is that person, you know, using Rachel and Dr. Shanna and Brittany, but they're also building up the support at the end with they're at the free support groups, they're doing the peer-to-peer, they're doing the things that they can do every single day of the week to keep themselves supported.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for that. Jennifer, did you have a question?
I was just, I guess kind of piggybacking off of that a little bit. What is something or any suggestions or ideas that we can do, and I know that I joined NAMI for that reason. Personally, situation was never dealt with a mental illness, and all of a sudden, you know, a spouse that's in a psychotic break and starting a fire in the backyard and being committed into the hospital, and I knew nothing of any of this. And so, got committed into a facility in Davidson, which was phenomenal. But 10 days later, he's out, and we've lost everything, and he's living in a hotel, and no therapist, no advocate, no nothing. He's just given these medications where he's able to drive a truck, but he's calling me. He stopped at the middle of the intersection because his brain can't function to turn left soon enough. So what can we do as a community other than, I know the people in this room are very community oriented and thinking about this, but what is something that we can do proactively to eliminate that? Is there something that the hospitals and literature, do we need to, as NAMI, get out there and make sure the hospitals have our literature? Because to be quite honest with you, until we got to the process of me as a spouse finding the top of mental health in Lancaster and looking and seeing on there the poster for NAMI, that's where I found NAMI. And I said, hey, listen, let me join in on this basics class, or let me join in on this family to family. And that's when I realized, oh, there are other people that have gone through exactly what I went through. And so that was our saving grace in that. But these things are needed when the patient is committed, honestly. I feel like as a community and being on living it, have lived it, I feel like they need to be given a packet of information, or a family member needs to be given information and saying, hey, here's your resources, this is what we're gonna do, these are our steps, because nothing is getting communicated to the patient or the family. And you're on your own, so you just pray to God that they have a decent family that is involved, because if not, we see what's happening, you know. So what is something we can do?
Well, hold the facilities accountable.
No, yeah.
Make the hospitals, ask them for, what information do you have for me? Outside of medications, what do you have for me? What programs are in the community? What is NAMI? Do you know about NAMI? Because, I mean, coming from an inpatient facility, I was disgusted as a professional. I still am. Because it was, here I am trying to help this person. I'm trying to heal their heart. I'm trying to heal their spirit. I'm trying to get them back to their family. And I'm limited. I'm stuck on, I have this much time to see this person. And then I got to move to the next person. Or you have a social worker that's supposed to be assigned to provide with different programming. They have a certain amount of time to talk to you. Hold these facilities accountable.
So just one question very quickly before we move on from that. So holding them accountable looks like what? It's like you're beholden by the insurance companies, and the insurance companies tell you how long you can meet with the client, right? So you have a certain amount of time. How do we as the family members, or ourselves when we're in a good place, how do we advocate and say, this is not enough for me and you have to give me more? If if I'm in that spot and I'm saying, I need more than 15 minutes with you, Dr. Shannon, I need like an hour and a half with you today, and you're saying, I can't, I've got to, my insurance company, my bosses, my people. So how do I make the difference with that? What do I do?
I actually used to get in trouble for spending extra time.
Sorry, Rachel.
I used to get in trouble for spending extra time. So I'd be like, okay, request a family meeting. Ask for a family meeting when they're starting to talk about discharge. Okay.
Dr. Shanna is amazing. This is not the norm.
Right.
I'm the one that I have a psychiatric diagnosis. I have two. This is not the norm, and that is so sad.
Right.
And let me tell you something. I work for the systems, and she used a word. I was disgusted working for the systems because it was not about people. It was about numbers. I was not always popular. I wasn't always popular because I said, let's get back to people. And I survived the systems, working for the systems. But let me tell you, being outside of the systems, I know I'm going to fight against the systems. And let me tell you one other thing. The politicians, they work for us. They work for us. And that's important to remember. I'm not on a side. I'm not on a side. But they work for us. We do not work for them. I do know the VA system does not like congressionals. They just don't. So that is a really good avenue when it comes to, fighting that particular system.
Know what's available for you. Know that insurance covers therapy once a week, but it also covers family therapy. Know that it might cover family therapy without the patient. Know that there's group therapy available. Know all the different things that your insurance covers so that you can take full advantage of that. You know, if somebody needs to see me more than once a week, okay, bring your parents in. Let's talk.
So if somebody's getting therapy, an individual is getting therapy, if they go for group therapy as well and they also go for family therapy, that's a really interesting point, because I do see that the systems that we've tried to navigate through, they really just, you've got to figure it out yourself. And so sometimes when you're out and it's done and there's no step downs, then you do need that 3 or 4 times a week, and then you need to go to that kind of 3 or 4 times a month, and that would be a way to get people kind of back into that.
But also something that was touched on in the documentary was that insurance a lot of times is a gap. People that don't have insurance, people that, you know, providers that don't accept certain insurances and things like that. And go through your employee, you know, go through your employer, ask about an employee assistance program. I have plenty of clients who see me with a certain amount of free sessions because their employer offers it. They don't know that. I have clients who say, well, I have an EAP, but you're not paneled with them. Let me know. I will get paneled with them. It takes 30 seconds on my part. Like, you don't know unless you ask.
Interesting.
I also think, like, we have an ethical obligation. I know me personally, like, as a therapist, I have an ethical obligation to provide pro bono services and sliding scale to a certain degree. I'm within a private practice right now, so I have a little bit less freedom to say, you know, what I'm gonna do pro bono, who I'm gonna see sliding scale, but you never know except to ask, because we know as providers that it is not always, I don't make the co-pays, I don't get any sort of say in it, so you never know but to ask, because it is supposed to be available for everyone. It should be available for everyone, and we're really trying.
But I have a family member he grew up in America, but he now lives in Spain, and he has severe mental illness right now, and he's in a lot of depression, and the mental health system there is not very good. So we're trying to help him, but he just started his medication, and he's gonna see a therapist, but I don't know, do they do telehealth internationally these days?
Would that be something, would somebody, I mean, Zoom is like everywhere, right? But I don't know if.
Yeah, I have limitations as a licensed therapist in South Carolina. With the pandemic, there were a lot of like boundaries that were opened up where I could provide telehealth in different states. With, you know, things kind of getting back to normal, that is definitely, you know, it's getting back towards like, it's a no-go if they're out of state. However, I know that BetterHelp and Talkspace are both online platforms, and they provide all over the world. And you can be, you know, at the beginning of the pandemic, I was doing some work with BetterHelp and Talkspace, and I had clients in Asia, I had clients in Europe, and it's a lot more flexible there. I know they're introducing a pharmaceutical side of that as well, and, you know, psychiatry online. So I would say the virtual platforms is something to definitely keep in mind. And a lot of them don't require insurance, and I think that's how they get around those barriers.
Right.
Do they have support groups too in those websites?
I don't believe so.
He can always attend a Zoom NAMI support group. We have them across every single state in America. I think there's 600 and somebody tell me 600 and how many affiliates? Somebody must know, come on.
Ballpark 600.
About 600 affiliates. So, time zone wise, he should be able to find one that would, you know, we have people in South Carolina who attend the San Diego support groups, because by the time they get home from work, they've had their dinner, they really don't want to like jump straight onto a Zoom call. They want to chill and then get on the Zoom call. So I have a couple of different people that do the support groups from the San Diego Zoom offices. So, I mean, that may be a solution that he could access as well. We've had a lot of people, we have some facilitators in here, and I know that.
Yeah, we've had people from California on our support groups.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely suggesting. Yes, Maria.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So some celebrities have come to the forefront and shared about their mental health. Do you think that this helps break down the social stigma surrounding mental health? Why or why not?
I definitely think it's helping break down the stigma, but it's also, I think, celebrities being, you know, in the spotlight, they should be held to a higher standard, just to the degree of, you know, people are looking up to you. There are children that look up to you. So it's one thing to say, like, I have a mental health illness, I have a mental health disorder, and that definitely breaks down the stigma to a degree, but also hold them accountable. What are you doing about it?
Mm-hmm.
Are you advocating for other people? Are you talking about your mental health journey? I know Jonah Hill, a famous actor, just posted, or just put his documentary on Netflix about his year-long therapy journey. And I think that is so amazing, because it's one thing to say, like, I have a mental health disorder and, you know, be a famous person so cool, people can connect to you. What are you doing about that, though? And if you aren't doing anything, get on it, because little kids are looking up to you and need to know.
Dr. Shannon?
Same thing. If you're gonna create a platform, at least be able to provide people with resources. And they're celebrities. They have money. They could get into any type of therapy they wanna get into. They can get any type of meds that they wanna get if they pay the right professional. I hate to say it the way that again, but it's really holding them accountable for their mental health. What are you doing? Are you assisting in the platform? Are you a part of NAMI? Are you taking advantage of the programs that are available? If not, get off of social media and stop influencing people the wrong way.
I think that's the big one for me. It's like if you're not going to do it the right way, then don't do it the wrong way, because it makes it harder. Rachel?
So when I was a little girl, nobody could really figure out what was going on with me with such behaviors. So I had the general term learning disabilities. And I was an IEP kid, and I think what we're missing is, well, one of the things when I had learning disabilities, my mom said, all of these stars have learning disabilities. So I did feel a little bit better about myself, because I truly was embarrassed. But the thing is what we miss is the kindness. There were no teachers that were kind to me. I wasn't liked. It wasn't until I got in high school that I had one teacher that liked me, because I wasn't an A student, I wasn't a B student, I wasn't a C student. I was struggling. Therefore, I was not popular. And those things stay with you for your life. So the important thing is, someone very wise told me this: you got to catch them when they're young. When you see a mother struggling in a store, don't roll your eyes, not you. Don't roll your eyes. Help her. Tell her it's going to be okay. If you're a huggy person, give them a hug. You know, and you know, we're so quick to blame. So it's very important that we catch these young kids.
Quickly. So we're going to wrap up in just a little, in a minute, but before we go, I really need a couple of questions answered from you guys. So we know that one of the things that we struggle with the most as a community is lack of service providers. People are not coming into the profession in the droves that they need to come into. The wages are not the best, and you can earn a lot more money doing something else, let's face it, with a lot less problems. So how do you keep your passion for mental health and helping people when all you're doing is being bombarded with problems all day? And what would you say to somebody who was thinking about coming into this profession? How do we get other people in this profession?
Well, I personally maintain my mental health through my own therapy, my own medication management, because don't trust a therapist who doesn't go to therapy. So that's for sure. What I do, I try to set really healthy boundaries with myself. You know, I do work a good long week, but I try to set some healthy boundaries with my time, because we do need more therapists. I'm very well aware of the lack of providers in the area. I am very well aware. I encourage just the young people that I talk to, or just the people I talk to in general who are thinking about going into the field, ask questions. You know, I was a first generation college student. I had no idea how to get into this field, but I always knew that I wanted to be a therapist. I really had to figure it out on my own. I had nobody telling me, yeah, you know, you have to do this, 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 and this. I tell my kids, I'm like, you know, ask me questions. I had to figure it out the hard way. I figured it out the hard way so that other people don't have to figure it out the hard way, you know, and just try to support each other and say, like, mental health is super important. It's a great field to be in. It's really, really difficult, but it's really, really rewarding.
Dr. Shanna?
Mine is more about remembering my why I got into the field in the first place. Mine happened to be a traumatic experience that I encountered some crappy therapist and some crappy psychiatrist, and I wanted something different. I do mindless things after my day, so like watching TV or ironically playing Sonic with my son, and just really rely on supportive family members to, sometimes have that thing with like, hey, I had a really hard day. Can I just have a hug? And I also have my own therapist, so I'm with Brittany here. Your therapist and your psychiatrist or your nurse practitioner needs to have somebody professionally that they bounce those things off, because it literally is, for me, it starts at 7 a.m. and sometimes it doesn't end till 8 p.m. where I am constantly hearing and just processing and assisting other people in processing what is really going on with them in their lives, and that's a lot.
There's a lot to take on, to take that and then go home and just be okay and make
We'll
dinner
go home,
and-
be a mom,
Yeah.
be a wife,
Yeah.
Just
be a
a
daughter.
Shake it
person
up,
in general.
shake it up. What would you say to people coming, because I know that, going through nursing school, then going through nurse practitioner school and going on to all those experiences that you especially have had, how did you maintain kind of that, what would you say to somebody coming into that, to achieve what you've already achieved? How?
I have a tribe. I
Okay.
literally have a tribe. And I didn't realize how much of a tribe I actually had. And they're not family members. They're friends. They're different people in the field. And to somebody coming in, and I actually precept students because I want to contribute to the profession. I tell the students all the time, what are you here for? What are you trying to do? What do you want to do in this profession? What difference do you want to make? If they cannot answer that question for me, I cannot precept them.
I don't know what precept means, I'm sorry.
I actually, so like it is somebody studying the same thing that I'm studying. So somebody trying to become a nurse practitioner.
Okay, so
Supervisor.
they can move on. Oh, I got
So
you.
they can move through their schooling because they have to be in clinical. So
I gotcha.
all of us psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, physician assistants, we all go through a clinical, and you have to be placed with somebody that already has that degree to guide you through that process. And oftentimes in that process, the other piece of this, and I'm sure you'll say the same thing, now they can go straight through school and not have any experience. And so I have to stop them because I actually went through school and got experience as I went. It was totally discouraged, but I did it. I'm different, I'm sorry. I did it anyway.
We love that about you.
I
That's
did,
like
I did it, I
that's
did
your
it anyway.
superpower.
They were like, we don't encourage you to work. Well, you know what? I'm working because I can't take care of people if I don't know what
Yeah.
I'm dealing with.
I think that's probably the one thing that I think makes NAMI so powerful is that we all have lived with, or we live with somebody with a mental illness. We all have fought through these systems and we all have gone through it. And so when you come to a NAMI, you're not coming to people who are theoretically trying to help you. They've really been there. And if all you need is a cup of tea and a conversation, then we're there for that. That is like, and I think that's what's really powerful. And that's sounding, we're going to move on to Rachel, but that's sounding pretty much what we've got
Last
to
thing
have.
before Rachel talks, and be able to relate.
Yes, to be able to relate to what people are going through, yeah. I think that seems to be a big driver.
I know we need people in these fields, but look, if there's no compassion, they can't care, and they judge, I don't want it. I don't want them. I remember going to a therapist it was a new therapist, and I was sharing, and I said, I have bipolar disorder. She said, well, I wish you hadn't shared that with me so soon, because I don't want to judge you. But I was smart enough to know, I know, this was the wrong therapist.
Yeah.
And I've worked in systems where people make fun of people that have mental health issues. So what is it going to take? More people that come in that aren't good? No, it's gonna take us. It's gonna take a community. It's gonna take peer-to-peer specialists. We're gonna all come together. That's what's going to fix it. And that's my hope.
Okay, any more questions?